Have you ever stopped to think about why most music kind of sounds the same deep down? Not the melody or the style, but the actual tone of it all. Well, it turns out that tone isn't some law of nature. It's a standard that was chosen. And the source material we're digging into today claims there's a whole hidden war behind that choice. Seriously, think about it for a second. That pop song on the radio, the score in a blockbuster movie, even the jingle in a commercial. They all share this underlying tonal quality. So why is that? Is it just a coincidence? Or is there something much, much bigger going on? Well, the answer, or at least a huge part of it, boils down to this one number, 440 hertz. This is the frequency that musicians use to tune the note A above middle C. And it's become the bedrock, the tuning reference for pretty much all of Western music. This number right here is the central clue in the whole story we're unpacking.
Right. This is absolutely not a happy accident or just what sounds best to most musicians. A equals 440 hertz is the official, internationally agreed upon standard. It's the rule. But the source material for this explainer poses a really critical question. Was it the right choice?
And this is where we get to the heart of the conflict presented in our source document. It frames this whole thing as a tale of two competing tones, a real showdown between two frequencies, each with a totally different story about where it came from and what it supposedly does to us. So on one side, you've got 432 hertz. The source material calls this the guardian frequency. It claims this tone is mathematically in sync with the patterns of the universe, with nature, with sacred geometry. And on the other side, 440 hertz. The document calls this the archonic hijack, a tone it says is inherently jarring, dissonant, and was pushed on the world by powerful groups to keep us stressed out. So what's the case for 432 hertz? According to the source, this frequency is in harmony with the Schumann Resonance, which is basically the measurable electromagnetic heartbeat of the Earth itself. The document says music tuned this way has been observed to actually lower heart rates, sync up the left and right sides of the brain, and create this deep state of relaxation and cellular coherence. Okay, so if we followed that logic, that 432 hertz was the natural harmonious standard, then how on earth did we end up at 440? Well, the source doesn't see this as a simple evolution. It frames it as a deliberate takeover, a hijack, engineered to make a frequency of dissonance the new normal. The timeline laid out is pretty clear-cut. The big push started in 1939 at a conference in London to make 440 hertz the global standard, even though a lot of musicians were against it. But by 1955, it was a done deal. The International Organization for Standardization, the ISO, made it official. And just like that, 440 became the law of the sonic land. But here's where the theory gets really specific about who was supposedly pulling the strings. The source alleges this had nothing to do with art or what sounded best. Instead, it claims the whole move was heavily lobbied by some very powerful interests. And it names them broadcasting cartels and the Rockefeller Foundation. And it doesn't stop there. To add another layer to this, the document makes a really pointed connection. It states that the very same Rockefeller Foundation that was backing the 440 hertz standard was also funding research into using sound for mass psychology and crowd control. The implication here is pretty clear. The motive wasn't musical, it was psychological. And that brings us to the alleged why. I mean, if this change was so deliberate, what was the end game? According to the source, the goal was nothing less than the weaponization of sound itself, turning music into a subtle, constant instrument of agitation. Now, to understand the mechanism the source alleges is at play, we've got to look at a very specific part of the human brain, the R complex. It's often called the reptilian brain. It's this ancient primal part of us that's all about survival, about fight or flight. And according to the source, this is the biological bullseye for the 440 hertz frequency. The source, pointing to researchers like Dr. Leonard Horowitz, lays out a very specific chain reaction. It starts, as you can see, when your ear picks up that signal. This supposedly triggers a tiny micro-stress response in the body. That in turn stimulates the R complex, the reptilian brain, and the final result is that we're all kept in this constant low-level state of agitation. So the ultimate conclusion from the source material is pretty staggering, to be honest. It calls the standardization of 440 hertz a hidden act of global acoustic warfare, a kind of sonic cage built to keep humanity anxious, ego-driven, and spiritually cut off from the natural, coherent frequency of our own planet. Now look, these are some extraordinary claims, for sure, but the source document doesn't just stop with history and biology. It goes on to present what it sees as observable, physical proof for this whole sonic war. And this so-called proof comes from the field of cymatics. Cymatics is basically the study of making sound visible. You take a plate, cover it with something like sand or water, and then vibrate it with a specific frequency. What happens is that the sand or water organizes itself into these beautiful, intricate geometric patterns. It's a way to literally see the shape of sound. And this is really the core of the source's physical evidence. According to their research, when you vibrate a medium like water at 432 Hz, the result is this pattern of incredible coherence. You get stable, beautiful, and aesthetically pleasing geometry, just emerging out of the chaos. But then, the source claims you switch that exact same setup to the modern standard, 440 Hz, and the whole pattern just falls apart. The geometry becomes distorted, the lines get fuzzy, the whole shape is unstable and chaotic. The argument here is that you are physically seeing the difference between a frequency that creates order and one that creates disorder. And so, after unpacking all these claims from the source material, we're left with this one final, really provocative question. Is the universal pitch that we hear every single day, the soundtrack to our modern lives, a frequency designed for harmony? Or is it, as the source alleges, an invisible cage of sound, engineered to keep us all permanently on edge?